Hi everybody, my name is Austin Von Ruden, and today we're going to be discussing hotel liability for guests' property from common law through today. In early English common law, one of the original principles of an innkeeper's duty was the duty to protect the property of the guest. These law principles date back to the 14th and 15th centuries in England. During this period of time, traveling was burdensome and potentially dangerous. All traveling was done either on foot or on horseback and could take days, if not weeks, to reach the final destination. Along the way, travelers would encounter thieves and outlaws who hid out in the woods. At the time, travelers carried all of their personal belongings with them, which ranged from common items to valuables, and would often get robbed if they weren't careful. To avoid loss of property, they would stay in inns at night where they would place trust in the innkeeper to watch over them and their property. The innkeeper was directly responsible for the guest's property and acted as an insurer. If something under the safekeeping of the innkeeper was lost or stolen, the innkeeper was held responsible for the full value of the items. The only exception to this absolute liability were in those cases where the loss was caused by the negligence or fraud of the guest, by the act of God, or by the public enemy. As people began to cross the Atlantic Ocean and settle in communities in America, they brought these common law principles with them. Many of the common law principles still exist today for hotels, but new statutes have been put in place to protect hotels from liability. Oftentimes, hotels had no knowledge of the value of their guests' property and needed protection against liability. In 1915, the innkeeper's liability for lost, stolen, or damaged guest property was greatly limited by Washington Statute 19.48. 19.48.030 acts as a safe harbor for guest items if the hotel abides by two conditions. The hotel must have a safe or vault available for their guests to deposit items, and the hotel must post notices of this statute in 3 or more public places. This could include behind the front desk, in the elevator, or in the lobby sitting area. If the hotel abides by these two conditions and the guest still does not deposit their items, then the hotel is not liable for the loss of the items. But if a guest deposits items in the safe, the hotel is not liable for the items unless they go missing due to theft or gross negligence of the hotel and its employees. The liability for missing items is capped at $1,000, and the hotel is not obligated to receive any guest property that is valued more than $1,000. Statutes like these help to limit the hotel's liability and the amount of money of recovery a guest could receive for stolen or lost goods. Hotels now offer many more services than they did during the Middle Ages. One modern guest service is holding items for guests after they have checked out. If a guest left an item with the hotel, then the hotel must hold the item for at least 6 months. After this, a written notice will be mailed to the guest, and the hotel could sell the property at a public auction to cover any fees the hotel may have incurred while dealing with the guest or holding their property. The hotel will have to comply with Washington Statute 60.64 and make sure that there was no written agreement between the hotel and the guest in order to avoid liability. The hotel could also just give any guest items to law enforcement to avoid liability as well. Hotels may now also be liable for guest vehicles. A hotel is liable especially if it offers a valet service. In a valet service, the car is transferred from the guest of the hotel to the hotel for safekeeping. This is an example of a bailment. Now with the guest's vehicle in possession, the hotel must assume a certain degree of liability. Hotels should also assume a certain degree of liability for guest vehicles parked in designated parking lots or garages. Hotels should also obtain insurance against liability for the loss or damage to guest property. With more services offered, it is up to the hotel to properly train their staff on how to handle guest property and avoid liability. Giving proper training is now more important than ever, as hotels are a revolving door for people and their items. A hotel should maintain clear procedures on handling personal property, and the hotel should train its employees to follow these procedures. Hotels should produce a paper trail for proof that they have fulfilled their duty of care. Common sense should also be used when dealing with guest items. Overall, the changes in law have had a positive impact on hotels. In early years, innkeepers were responsible for all property and were expected to pay the full value of the missing or stolen items. Today, statutes and limitations aim to protect hotels from full liability. There are also caps placed on the amounts a hotel will pay for a guest item if it gets lost or stolen, as well as caps placed on the amount something is worth that the hotel could keep. Doing this helps to save the hotel from the potential liability of losing very expensive items. There are also more rules and regulations that hotel employees must abide by, which can also limit liability. Hotels are now protected more than they have ever been. As the hospitality industry continues to grow and evolve, their laws and regulations will as well. Here on the next slide is my works cited, and I just want to take a moment to thank everybody for listening to my presentation today, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.